ADC Sports presents a Frick Media Productions, created by the founder and editor at the ADC Network, Sam Frick. This is the opening drive. Welcome to episode 10 of the opening drive. My name is Sam Frick. I'm the founder and editor at ADC Sports, covering schools across Northeast Indiana, Elkhart County, and to the good folks down in Marion, Indiana. Here at ADC Sports, we have 6 teams left in the football state tournament. We are down to semi-state, and that means one more win will take you to Luers Oil Stadium for the state finals on Thanksgiving week for the opportunity to play for the state championship. We have a school in all 6 classes still playing, which is unheard of at ADC Sports. Now, obviously, by default, by having more schools we cover, the chances of that do increase. That said, it's still unheard of to have that many schools still left at this point in the state tournament. It is a grateful opportunity to even just cover 1 or 2 teams playing in semi-state, but to have 6 still playing is remarkable, to say the least. And for that, we at ADC Sports are eternally grateful to have the opportunity to cover 6 games or to talk about these 6 games this week here as we prepare for Friday night, the second to last Friday night of the season. I can't believe it's gone by so quickly. I think every year it feels like Friday nights get a little bit shorter, it seems, and the season goes by way too fast. I think we go way too fast sometimes on the football landscape of things. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and just talk about these games coming up, and we'll have an interview later on the show with head football coach at Concord, Koehler, as he previews the matchup with Merrillville coming up as Concord looks to get back to the state finals. Ironically, they started the season as being Road Warriors. They're going to end the season as Road Warriors no matter what happens. They're going to be on the road this week. So obviously, this is kind of meant to be in terms of how things are playing out for the season. And so we are going to go ahead and discuss the football landscape for our area. We begin. Let's go ahead and go with 1A. Let's just go with the Adams County schools, because obviously, if you look at the semi-state pairings, we have South Adams in 1A, we have Adams Central in 2A, Bishop Luers in 3A, Dwenger in 4A, Concord in 5A. They're the only school outside the Chusitso that's left. And then Carroll is in 6A. Now, let's shift to focus and discuss the South Adams Starfires. Okay? We're back to the same scenario as last year for South Adams. Last season, this team quietly, if you would, made it to the semi-state round. And, a lot of people overlooked them last year. They didn't have the best regular season into what South Adams normally provides. And, they came in as underdogs and, they did their job and got to semi-state. You look at this year, team with more expectations, older team. They bring big guys back. They're back to semi-state once again. Now, last week, this time around, against North Miami, it was at North Miami this year, and it was a lot closer game this time around. 25-22 game for South Adams in the favor. Honest to true, it was one of those games just back and forth all night long. It was a defense game. It was a physical game. It was a game full of hardworking kids and multiple heroes leading the way. Titus Lemon did what Titus Lemon usually does. 16-26 passing for 322 yards, 3 TDs, right? He had 13 yards rushing for South Adams. He actually led the Starfires in rushing, which is interesting to say the least there. Derek McCain, 7 catches for 120 yards, 2 TDs. Wes Somerset, 4 catches for 118 yards, and he became the all-time leader receiving yards in South Adams history. And, you look at on defense with Nathan Plattner with 16 tackles. Burn Witness had him as a player of the game against North Miami. There's just so many heroes for South Adams in that win against North Miami, a really good North Miami team that runs a really good power run offense at North Miami. And so to do so in that manner is quite impressive, to say the least. Now, this sets up the matchup with Pioneer, the powerful Pioneer Panthers. Very good program in the right in the Cass County area, right? Pioneer is a traditional power in football in that area. They've been a powerhouse for quite a few years, although they haven't quite been at the level that they were, a decade or so ago when they were getting to state and winning state championships. They're not quite there at that level, but they're starting to get back there. They won regionals this year for the first time since 2020. They had a nice group of kids that year. That year in 2020, Pioneer, the Panthers, you know what to expect with Pioneer. They've always been known as a team that runs the football. You kind of expect that with Pioneer. So once again, Southampton's going to face another team that runs the football at will. This team averages 339 rushing yards per game. They're going to run the football. They're going to have success running the football. This is a really good team. They have 64 rushing touchdowns. Their leading leader in touchdowns is their quarterback in Micah Rance. Their quarterback and corner has 24 total touchdowns this year. Shiloh Rhines, their junior running back and free safety, he's got 17. Their fullback and outside linebacker, Noah Van Meter, got 16. They got a three-headed beast at Pioneer, offensively speaking. They are going to pound the rock. Southampton knows that. But this is a different beast with Pioneer because of the athletes they have at Pioneer and whatnot. When you look at that matchup with the Panthers, now granted they do play a conference that's not great, but when you have a team like this that runs the ball at will, I mean, those three guys, I mean, they got over 3,000 rushing yards combined. They rushed for 409 yards as a team. That's impressive, right? So obviously for South Adams, they're going to have to be able to obviously contain the run. They're going to have to be able to throw the ball at will. That's going to be hard to do so because Pioneer's defense is pretty good. They average only 10 points per game for scoring defenses. So they don't give up a lot of points. And Micah Rance is pretty good defensively as well. They got a pretty solid defense at Pioneer. They're obviously going for South Adams. They're going to have to get nice, long, sustained drives. And, for South Adams, they got to make sure they turn those long runs into short little spurts for South Adams. You don't want Pioneer to turn those 2 or 3 yard rushes into 20 or 30 yards, right? South Adams going to have to score. I mean, if you play a team like Pioneer, you got to score some points. But I think it's pretty straightforward, I think, for South Adams at this point. You got to take care of the football. You got to have good field positioning. Got to win the battle in the trenches. South Adams has done a good job. Both teams that really have done a good job all year of taking care of the football. So whoever can make the fewest mistakes in terms of turnovers, in terms of field positioning, in terms of those drives, can they sustain those drives? Those are things we look at and say, that could be the difference in the ball game on Friday night for either of South Adams or Pioneer. South Adams has not made it to the state finals since 2020. Pioneer has not made it back to the state finals since 2018. So one of those two teams is going to be able to break a pretty decent drought in terms of getting to the state finals for Pioneer. They have some guys up front. They're pretty, again, hardworking team. They got some big boys, one of which I want to mention here real quick for Pioneer is Juan Solano. He's got over 100 tackles on the season for Pioneer. And remember, those are guys that play both ways at Pioneer. So those guys, they work their tails off to make it happen for the Pioneer Panthers. So look for this to be a physical game. Look for this to be a game full of long drives and try to sustain its run, if you would, and try to get that early lead and then sustain it and then control the line of scrimmage, if you would. Those are things key for both teams. And obviously Southampton's going to have to continue to be what they're known for, and that's to be able to throw the football and create separation in the passing game, which Southampton clearly does. I think, to me, if Southampton can take care of the football, they can be disciplined, have good field positioning, and they can sustain those Pioneer runs so they're much more minimal. I think Southampton's biggest difference to me is they throw the ball at an exceptional level. And when you're in 1A football, that type of athleticism makes a huge difference at this level. And I think that's where I think Southampton may be favored in this game. But I do know with Pioneer, they do have some tough guys. And it's going to be a tough game. And I think Pioneer knows defensively they're going to have to cover the receivers well. That is something they have not faced a lot of this year. And so look for this to be a game of chess, if you would, for these two teams. This will be an interesting matchup on Friday night. Adams Central. So last week they played Eastbrook, and I said this would be one of the hardest games Adams Central's played all year. It became one of the hardest games all year. 42-28, you think, okay, the Jets won this game. Well, it didn't go exactly as it planned for the Jets. First off, they had a rough first half. They didn't play great early on. Eastbrook took kind of punched in the mouth early on. They led 14-0 to start. Jets did not play like themselves early on. And eventually they responded. They got it together for the Jets. And obviously Adam Central did what Adam Central does best. And Jamison Rhodes stepped up big time in the second quarter onward. Obviously they scored 21 unanswered to take the lead, 21-14. And then there were a couple key moments that allowed the Jets to get to victory lane, one of which was a Cam Fravel PAT block that kept it 21-20 after the Eastbrook score. And then after the Jets score made 28-20, Eastbrook came back. I believe Bodie Howe got the touchdown that play. Slater converted the 2-point conversion at the 28 all game. Jets had the ball right and on their end, not too far from midfield. And first play from scrimmage, about a little under 7 minutes to go in the game. Vance Miller runs 63 yards to the right side and gets that game-winning touchdown. The Jets would take the lead. They went for on fourth down late in the contest, fourth and 3, I think it was, and then Roach went for it. I mean, they obviously they called it on a pass on fourth down, gutsy call in that situation, and Roach found Everett for the touchdown to make it 42-28, and the Jets win this game by 14. So now that we know the Jets are going to 3A next year, okay, that's the last time we're going to mention that this year, okay. No matter what happens, this is it for Adam Central 2A, for at least for the time being. Next year they're moving to 3A. That is the last time I'm going to mention that. Okay, got it? Okay, move on. So we got Andrean coming up. Last year, this was the biggest game of the year. This was Adam Central's toughest game for them. Facing Andrean on the road, tough game. We know what Andrean is. They're big, they're physical. It's the region. They always got these great athletes, proud program. They always expect to win in these big games, right? Private school, yada, yada, yada. And Adam Central won that game 20-13. Probably was a little bit closer in that year than it should have been. But nonetheless, it was a gritty game. Andrean really made Adam Central earn it. I think Matt Heiss had 2 rushing touchdowns in this game against Andrean. He was critical in that game against the Fighting 59ers. Again, Andrean, proud tradition at Andrean. I expect this to be a close game. This will be the Jets' toughest team yet. Once again, and with how things are shaping up right now, there is a possibility we could see the Jets play LaPel in the state final. I'm not saying it will be LaPel if Adam Central were to win, but LaPel did knock off Indy Lutheran last week 38-7. I mean, LaPel's got something special. They got a quarterback that's amazing at LaPel, but they got to get past defeated Brownstown Central first. So we'll see how that goes. They both have great programs. But I'm just saying, if the Jets do win on Friday, which is not a guarantee this week, Andrean's really good, there is a possibility we could see LaPel in the state final. Very decent possibility, I think. Brownstown Central will have a chance too, but I think LaPel, for the talent they have, I think they are definitely a threat in the state tournaments, and they're one to keep an eye on. So something to note there. And LaPel is a school down in Anderson, for those that are wondering. So let's talk about the opponent that Adam Central is going to face. The Andrean Fighting 59ers. Okay. This team's got studs. Okay. We expect that. They play a hard schedule. So you can't sit here and say, well, Andrean doesn't play anybody, because Andrean plays a lot of good teams. I mean, look at their schedule that Andrean plays. They play Maryville. That's their only loss. And Maryville's really, really good. Bishop Luers. We know what Bishop Luers is. They're still standing in the state tournament. They played Munster. They played Hober. They were in regionals last week. They played Angola. They also played in regionals last week. They had a pretty tough game against Wheeler. Played them pretty tough in the sectional. Rensselaer Central's decent. And then Southmont regionals last week, they played them pretty tough as well for the Fighting 59ers at Andrean. You look at this team. They are a team that can run. They can also throw the football, if you would, at Andrean. The Fighting 59ers, they complete 69% of their passes, QBR of 113.7. So Andrean is no one-trick pony. They will definitely throw the football if they need to. Running the ball. They don't run the ball like other teams do, but they do rush for 2,000 yards as a team. They average 175 rushing yards per game, which is 5.2 yards per carry. So when they do need to run the ball, they go for those chunk yards, if you would, try to grind some clock if they need to, get some manageable position, and they let the athletes at Andrean do what they do best. Leading the way in rushing touchdowns for Andrean is number 9, Brady Stovall. I think he has 10 rushing touchdowns on the season for Andrean. You look at their wide receiver in Tyler Vo. He's got 13 total touchdowns. He is a receiver. He's got 12 catches for 74 catches for 1,049 yards, 12 TDs. So they're all in the passing game for Mr. Vo. Let's see here. Their quarterback is Brady Ellish. He's got 9 TDs on the air for him. He is throwing for 1,084 yards on 69% completion. 9 TDs, just 2 picks, 112.9 QBR. So he's definitely improved in terms of that. They do have 2 quarterbacks that they do have at Andrean. So I'm kind of wondering why they have 2 quarterbacks. They've used them both relatively evenly, if you would, at Andrean. So I'm not sure if it's because of the competition they face. They've occasionally rotated quarterbacks or whatnot, but they have the senior, which is Ellish, and then their sophomore is Dylan Gore. I do wonder if Andrean does try to utilize both quarterbacks in this game against Adams Central to try to throw them off. Something to note here. Something to keep an eye on for Adams Central fans if you are going to Andrean. Should be an interesting matchup from that standpoint forward. Defensively, I mean, if you've seen Andrean last year, they're not much different from last year. They were mostly the same team. You know what to expect. Christian Gavin kind of leads the way in tackles for the 59ers. They have another guy that tackles about 80 tackles. Landon Murray's averaging 4 sacks on the season. Gavin averaging 7.3 tackles per game. Mitchell Myers in the secondary got 3 picks. He's their outside linebacker. They got some good players, right? And so with Adams Central in this game, obviously they got to take care of the football, right? You got when you're playing against a team like Andrean, you got to take care of the football, and you can't. And also the other thing too is you can't get off to slow starts with Andrean. They last week against Eastbrook, it shows that you got to play 4 quarters of football, and that was the first time all year where Adams Central really in the playoffs didn't play quite 4 quarters of football. In that game against Eastbrook, thankfully they did recover for the Jets, and they were able to come back and win this game. Eastbrook's got a great team, by the way. Let's not make it like Eastbrook's a bad team. Adams Central did recover, and it was a well-played football game. But Andrean's going to be a much tougher task up front. Going to be a much tougher task in terms of the skills positions. They are definitely more athletic. They are definitely more willing to throw the football, which is something the Jets really haven't seen much all year, other than maybe South Adams, a little bit of the East Side. But really, other than that, they haven't seen a lot of teams that can throw the ball to the level of Andrean. This will definitely be a tall task. It's going to come down to the Jets secondary. It's going to come down to Cam Frabel being the guy that's going to pressure the quarterback. They're going to have to get to the quarterback. They're going to have to contain those long drives and make sure they limit those scoring chances and be disciplined defensively. If the Jets can do that, they'll have a chance to win this game. But obviously, Andrean's going to be a different animal in this ball game. We'll talk more about that game later on this week. We prepare for the matchup at Andrean, which one win away from the state finals for Adams Central. And keep in mind, too, Vernon Witness did mention this as well. If Adams Central wins this week, they would become just the second team to ever reach 5 straight state finals. The only team to ever do so was Indianapolis Cathedral from 2010 to 2014. And that is a private school. That's a large school in Cathedral. We're talking about Adams Central is going to be moving up to 3A next year. I lied when I said this would be my last time saying it. Now this is my last time talking about Adams Central moving up to 3A. But just know that Adams County has been spoiled with great football over the years. Now, let's shift over to 3A. We got Fort Wayne Bishop Luers coming up. They're hosting the Knott's Redskins. And Bishop Luers, again, Luers has hung their hats on defense, right? They've done this for a long time at Bishop Luers. And on Friday at Twin Lakes, defense was not only critical, it was a huge part of their win on Friday night. Bishop Luers was tested by Twin Lakes' defense, and we expected that last week. They only threw for 55 yards. Okay, Riker did not have his best game throwing the football, but he didn't make a lot of mistakes. He only made just a few mistakes. So they didn't make a lot of mistakes that really hurt Bishop Luers in this game. What really helped Bishop Luers, though, was their ground game, led by sophomore Brandon Gaither II. 22 carries, 160 yards, a touchdown for him. And with Gaither II now reaching 1,000 rushing yards, him and TJ Epperson, they become the first 1,000 point scorers in the same season in Bishop Luers history in football. This is the first time that they've had 2 running backs rush for 1,000 yards on the season in Luers' history. Again, that is going to be critical coming up against Knox. What's also going to be critical is going to be the defense. And the biggest thing when we talked about Bishop Luers' front line is going to be the Taylor kids, right? A.L. Taylor, their outside linebacker defensive edge, and Jerron Taylor, their defensive tackle, okay? Jerron had 4 tackles, 2 TFLs against Twin Lakes. The other Taylor had just 1 tackle, but still, Taylor's presence is so much bigger than just the stats would tell you. You also look at stats, and only 1 sack for Luers. They're gonna want to get some sacks in this game against Knox. Dallas Mata had the lone sack for Bishop Luers with a 3-yard loss for against Twin Lakes. This is a different matchup for Bishop Luers. They also had 2 picks defensively, and that was from Darion Carswell and Jackson Hill. So again, Luers' defense is going to be key here, and they're big, they're physical, and that is something the Knox Redskins, the nation's Cinderella team that everybody wants to cheer for, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Congratulations to Knox. You've made it to semi-state for only the 2nd time in program history. Nice, gritty win against Angola. I give a shout out to Miles McLaughlin for acknowledging Angola's efforts. He could have easily just celebrated the game and just ignore it, but he did give Angola praise, not only on X, but he also mentioned that on the interview with Chuck Freebie, which if you haven't seen that on Sports Michiana, please do so. Miles McLaughlin, very humble kid, always crediting his teammates, which you want that. You want the other kids to be credited for their success, and Knox's success is so much more than just Miles McLaughlin. Everybody talks about him right at the cusp of the nation's rushing record, right? He already set the record for most rushing TDs in the season in the history of high school football, regardless of state. Great job, right? But remember that it comes down to a whole team effort. And what people forget is that an offensive line is so important in any type of football. So understand that for Knox to win this game on Friday, they have got to block well. They have got to protect Miles McLaughlin. He's not only their quarterback, but he's also positioned as a quarterback. So it's kind of a single wing wildcat formation with Knox. Miles McLaughlin is going to be the guy that gets the ball 80% of the time. Okay. And people want to make fun of that. Like, it's just one guy doing everything for them. But that's the way they utilize their formation, and it works to what works best. Okay. I mean, let's not play down to that. Like, I get it. Their schedule hasn't been great. They don't play a lot of teams that really contest Knox, which that will be different this week. McLaughlin now 4,768 rushing yards, 462 carries, 71 rushing TDs. That is incredible. Even the best part about it is he had a pick to seal the game against Angola. That was just perfect cinema for Knox to win that game against Angola. By the way, great effort from Angola to make this interesting. It's Knox. I wasn't sure how Angola was going to be able to plan it out, and credit to them. They made it tough for Knox on Friday night. Now, for the Redskins, going to be a tall task against Bishop Luers. Can the offensive line at Knox get the job done? Can those big boys at Knox protect him up front? Okay. Are they going to be able to get the job done? I think defensively, Knox will do its job. You got Mattis Kinder at the corner position. You got Keegan Everidge, Hunter Anderson. Just a handful of names I can mention here. Kane Weber's got 5 sacks, right? So they got some tough dudes. They're not as big as Bishop Luers, and that's the thing. Like, Bishop Luers is their biggest opponent they face. They're big, they're physical, they're athletic. I'm telling you this, folks, if you have not seen Bishop Luers play, you have not seen anything yet with this team. I'm not playing down to the competition. And also, Miles McLaughlin has 8 picks. People forget that. They want to make fun of it, like, well, Miles is a running back, blah, 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 blah. He plays defense, folks. Wake up. Open your eyes. Kid can play defense, too. I just get tired of all these naysayers that they think they know football, but really they're just a bunch of talking heads. Like, watch some film before you make assumptions about these kids. Knox will make this interesting, obviously. It's going to be a competitive game. Knox has 18 sacks. Their front's going to make things hard for Luers up front. Bishop Luers is young offensively. They're going to have their mistakes, just like Knots will have their mistakes in this game. But at this point in the year, Bishop Luers is no longer a team with a bunch of sophomores. They're now an experienced team. We expect Luers to be competitive in this game. The other thing you have to know here, too, is Knots is going to Bishop Luers on Friday. There's a chance for showers on that day. And Luers Field is not a turf field. It's 45 years old. It's not the biggest facility out there. Okay, it's a great facility. It's historic. It's celebrated for its tradition. And Bishop Luers is very proud of its football traditions, one of the most successful football programs in IHSA history. They are obviously going to embrace that. This is home field advantage for Bishop Luers. And so Knots is going to have to deal with the weather. They're going to deal with the field conditions. They're going to have to deal with I would say, a rather rabid fan base at Bishop Luers. This is a different environment. They have not faced anything like this all year long. And on top of all that, you got this massive platform of people that have no association with Indiana whatsoever, talking about one kid and making assumptions about one kid. There's a lot to talk about this game. And Bishop Luers is hearing this. They know. I can tell you this right now. If I said Angola going to come in with an underdog mentality last week, I fully expect the same for Bishop Luers. People want Knots to win this game. People want Miles McLaughlin to get this record. They want this to happen because it's something we've never seen before. And I'm not saying it will never happen again, but it's hard to do it. It's hard to achieve this for 4 years. And Miles has done that. And you can say, well, if he was in a bigger school, blah, blah, blah. Okay. That's irrelevant. The point is he's doing it. He is chasing history. He's putting himself into the dance of history. Now, as in addition to this dance, he's going to have to figure out how to help his team get to states. Because I'm just saying this right now, folks. Bishop Luers is not your typical 8-5 team. What you saw in Angola last week is night and day difference with Bishop Luers. They play the SAC. They play the SAC. They have an elite defense, elite athletes galore. This is not the same team that you faced last week. You better be ready to play on Friday nights. You better be ready to play. Because if you're not ready to get your hardworking helmets on and put on your work boots, if you're not ready to block and compete with the Taylor kids and all the big studs they have at Bishop Luers, you're in for a long, long night. Because this team, they are not, I'm telling you this right now, folks, Bishop Luers expects to win state championships every year. They expect to win in the playoffs. They play in the conference that puts them in position to compete for a state championship. They will not be intimidated whatsoever with Miles McLaughlin whatsoever. They will not be intimidated. No way. And you can tell me, well, Andrain had this really good running back named, I believe it was Drake Bowen. And he went to Notre Dame afterwards, and they couldn't stop him. Well, that's a different story. That's Andrain. Andrains, they're like Bishop Luers. They're the Bishop Luers of that area. This is not Andrain. This is Knots. They have never played a team like this before. And this is a whole different situation for them. Playing at Bishop Luers in that type of environment and that type of proud tradition. It's not quite Bishop Chatard level, but it has its own history. Luers will be ready to play, and I expect them to be ready to play. I expect Bishop Luers to make life hard for Miles McLaughlin. Even if he gets his yards and he gets his touchdowns, they will make this hard for him. I expect this to be a game where even if Knox wins this game, I expect him to work his tail off to win this game. Knox's offensive line has to play well. The defense will do his job. I think they'll do as well as it could. But the offensive line Knox is critical in this game. If they don't block well for Miles McLaughlin, they will not win this game. Because the Luers' athletes, they're just too strong. They're too physical. They will wear that defense down. So I'm just telling you right now, this is my warning to you, all you Miles fans out there. Be careful what you wish for. Because now you got Bishop Luers. You better be ready to play. Knots, you better be ready to play. That's all I'm going to say. Congratulations, you made it this far. But now you got yourself a worthy opponent. I mean, Angola was a worthy opponent last week. This is a whole nother beast. You better be ready to go. Okay. We have class. Trying to remember here. 4A, yes. I almost forgot for a minute. Class 4A is Fort Wayne Bishop Dwenger. They are taking on South Bend St. Joe. Nice win against Lebanon last week on the road, 39-27. Not your typical Bishop Dwenger game, if you would. They did score a little bit more in this game. The defense did struggle a little bit with Lebanon. Lebanon did put up a good effort in this game. But in the end, Dwenger found a way to advance. And now you get St. Joe on Friday, the team they played. I think they played them in 2015, if I remember right. That was the last time St. Joe made it past sectionals. And so you look at Dwenger right now, at home in Shields Field, home field advantage against St. Joe, proud tradition of St. Joe. Although they haven't had a lot of success in the postseason for football, they have not won a state championship since 1995. So they haven't had the same level of postseason success as Dwenger. But obviously, they have a proud tradition at St. Joe. Henry Jordan had a great game against Lebanon. 18-23 passing for 175 yards, 78% completion, 2 TDs for him. It really was Henry Jordan, one of Henry Jordan's best games as a Saints, if you would. A really balanced all-around offense for Bishop Dwenger. Didn't make a lot of mistakes in this game, which was critical. Defensively, I mean, when we talked about Dwenger, their defense is what makes them who they are. Anthony Shepperly, 8 tackles for him. You got Cooper Campbell with 6 for the Saints. Hold on a second. I lost my stats for just a moment. Houston Ellinger with 5 tackles for him. Got another J.C. Piper with 8 tackles. Saints had 6 TFLs in that game against Lebanon. Obviously critical there. Shefferly also with a sack in this game. Campbell with a pick. Jackson Parrish is a guy that I know is going to be one to watch in St. Joe. Their corner quietly having a nice year. Carter Zent, their junior, free safety, great year for him. The secondary is going to be key in this game against St. Joe because St. Joe is definitely going to be a team that's going to have some athletes. They're going to be able to move the ball in different ways here. They did a good job with Lebanon, at least containing the offense. They did hold to 88 yards rushing, which is big. Obviously, Lebanon did have some success on the passing game. Chris Hill threw for 39 yards, 54% completion, 3 TDs, 1 pick. He had his success, and he was able to find Tannen Mondin. So they had success. Obviously, Dwenger had to score in this game for them to propel into victory lane. St. Joe will be a pretty challenging opponent for the Bishop Dwenger Saints. St. Joe comes in averaging 26 points per game. What's interesting about St. Joe is their defense has been great. If we talk about Bishop Dwenger's defense being good, their defense has been almost perfect. I mean, they've had one bad game defensively all year, and that was against Penn. St. Joe's only given them 8.5 points per game. They have 4 shutouts, right? They have 4 shutouts, and then you have 5 additional games with less than 10 points. I mean, 7 points or less. So you're talking, we're talking 9 games below 10 points or less. I mean, that's incredible for St. Joe. And this is their first appearance in the semi-state in 10 years. I'm pretty sure those two met back in 2015. Dwenger won that game convincingly on their way to a state championship. St. Joe hasn't been here very often. It's their first appearance since 2015. They have not won semi-state since 2011. No state championships since 1995 when they were a 3A school. So I think, to me, the key thing is that defense is going to be a theme in this game because both teams play really good defenses. We expect this to be the case. St. Joe, pretty balanced offense, although they do run the ball a little bit more, rushing for 2,328 yards, 5.2 yards per carry. We expect this to be a game of physicality, a game of it's a war, if you would, between these two teams. The Saints, the Huskies, 2 Catholic schools face it off for a trip to the state finals. 2 proud traditions. Although Dwenger's had more state finals success than St. Joe does, obviously. They got a couple of guys at St. Joe with some good numbers here this year. I'll try my best to pronounce them, but I'm going to say this right now. I'm not going to like my chances here of pronouncing them. One of which is Mason Kazmierzak. Sorry, I don't cover St. Joe. He averages 7.5 tackles per game. You got Charles Grew, 9 sacks for him, senior outside linebacker, tight end. James Crenini, 7 picks. So MJ Marsh with a caused fumble. Mason Kaz, let's call him Kaz, just to not butcher his name twice. 2 fumble recoveries for him. You got Kabi Addo, 23 QB hurry. So you got some really talented defensive playmakers at St. Joe. I mean, defensively, they're going to do its job and tackle. They got, let's see, they got well over 30 sacks. They have 38 sacks on the season for them. 85 TFLs, 18 picks. I mean, these guys, they cause a lot of havoc for opposing teams. And they played a decent conference in the NIC. There's some decent teams they play. I mean, they played Lakeland, not a bad NECC team. Played Southside. They got athletes there. They played Elkhart, decent team. They've obviously competed with Penn. They beat Northridge, a battle-tested Northridge team. They beat Mishawaka on the road, a team that made it to semi-state last year. Hobart, they beat them by 3 points, 10-7. So we expect this to be a game that's going to be not pretty, kind of gritty, low-scoring games. It's going to be physical. It's going to come down to special teams, I think, in this game. And it may come down to the kicking. I don't know exactly about how good the kicking game is at St. Joe, but I know at Bishop Dwenger, they obviously have a great kicker of their own in Lucas Gwen. And Lucas Gwen broke the school record for longest field goal twice this year. Lucas Gwen is very capable if he has to. He's capable of kicking a long one for the win. He kicked one from 50, and the longest he's kicked 55 yards. So this is not a daunting test for Bishop Dwenger because they can win these type of games. They have won these gritty games all year long, just like St. Joe has. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. Remember, Dwenger played Ron Cali early this year. There's a chance, as Ron Cali's still alive in this state tournament, there is a decent chance that we could get another matchup of Bishop Dwenger and Ron Cali in the state finals. There is a chance. Now, Ron Cali's got to play Heritage Hills, and Heritage Hills has the Goldsberry kid, who is amazing at quarterback. They won state last year in 3A. They have moved up to 4A due to the success factor. So there is a possibility Heritage Hills could be in the state finals, but it's going to be a tall task against Ron Cali. This is going to be an amazing game. I think the St. Joe Dwenger game is going to be if you like defense, if you like big boys that get after it, and they do what they do best under very little talk, this is the game for you. This will be a fun matchup at Dwenger. I have no idea who wins this game because I think both teams can easily win this game. They're so much alike because that's who they are. They're built to be physical, tough, and really get to the trenches. This should be a fun matchup. It really is going to come down to those small little things, and it may again just come down to the special teams and to the kicking game of Dwenger. Take a look at 5A, and you'll see my interview with Craig Koehler later on the show as he talks about Concord's run. Obviously, the Road Warriors of the Concord Minutemen. I'm not going to go too much in depth here because obviously we'll talk more about the Lafayette Jeff game in the interview. But Concord, great, crazy 2 minutes of football. We have seen some crazy games this playoffs from our area schools. Eastbrook with the Miracle Alexandria, Angola with the onside kick against Garrett in the sectional championship game. And now you got this game here where Concord had the onside kick to even have an opportunity to win the game. 48-yard field goal from Nathan Potter. He becomes a hero that will remember forever with Concord. They win this game 47-45 at Rice Field in Elkhart. And now you get this matchup at Merrillville. We'll talk more about that in the interview with Craig Koehler about the Concord Minutemen. But obviously for Concord, the key is going to be they're not going to stop Merrillville. Merrillville's really good. You're not going to stop a team that spreads the ball and do so at an elite level like the Merrillville Pirates. It's going to come down to which team it may come down to which team has the ball last, to be honest with you. It's going to come down to which team makes the fewest mistakes. And more importantly, it's going to be, which team's going to be able to, coach calls it having an edge in certain areas. Special teams, as he said, is going to be key here. And we'll talk more about that later on. But Concord is obviously going to have an opportunity to try to get to state, something that hasn't happened in Concord in a while for the Minutemen. Last time they made it to state, 2006. They've made it to state 3 times, 84, 98, and 2006. 84, they fell to Brownsburg. Let's see here, 98. They lost to Cathedral, and then 2006 they played Cathedral again, which they beat Dwenger in the process to get to that state finals. They lost to Cathedral once again by 24 points. Now, keep in mind, the winner of this game will have I would say, a pretty fair chance of playing New Palestine in the state finals. And that team has been over the last decade plus, they have been the standard when it comes to excellence these days. New Palestine had a nice win against East Central last week. They're going to be tested again this week at home against Bloomington South, who averages 41 points per game. But I'm going to be honest with you, it's going to be hard for me not to say New Pal has a chance. I think, to me, I would assume the winner of the Concord Maryville game is going to have to play New Pal unless Bloomington South proves otherwise. But I'm fascinated to talk more about this Concord Maryville game in the preview. I expect a lot of points. Unlike the St. Joe Dwenger game, I'm expecting a lot of points. These two have a lot of great players. They're very athletic. They're very explosive. I expect there to be points. These two teams have great athletes. This will be a track meet. It's going to come down to which team makes the fewest mistakes and which team has the ball last. Because I think it really comes down to that thin of margin between these two teams. And then let's go ahead and get to Carroll for our last game to talk about. The Carroll Chargers are 9-3. Okay. Let's go back to our last episode. Remember when Carroll started the season 1-3 for the first time in 20 years? And I said, oh no, Carroll is down. What can we do? Oh no, Carroll doesn't look like Carroll of the old. They look vulnerable. What are we going to do, Carroll? And now the narrative was, oh no, they got to go to Penn, the crown jewel of South Bend. How's Carroll going to stop this team? Carroll's down by blah, blah, blah. They're not going to beat Penn. They're the big, bad Penn Kingsmen. They don't know what they're doing. Who are these guys from Huntertown? And Carroll, in comeback fashion, they come back from a double-digit deficit, I believe it was, and they win this game 42-30 at Penn. What an amazing game for Dave Freisinger and Jaidon Van Pelt. Freisinger, 21-34 passing for 424 yards. 424 yards. 2 TDs and 1 pick, though, but still, what he did outweighed that one mistake. Rushing-wise, 24 carries for 102 yards, 1 touchdown for him. And then Jaidon Van Pelt, 9 catches for 197 yards and 1 touchdown for Carroll. Obviously, defense really wasn't the story in that game against Penn. We kind of knew this was going to be a hard game to actually slow down the Penn offense. They're just so explosive, right? You're not going to really fully stop Penn, right? So they obviously did its job well and whatnot. And Carroll found a way to win and come back to win this game. In the end, Jaidon Van Pelt, Van Pelt had a rough start to the year. He missed the Centered Road game, right, for reasons. But I will tell you this, he has definitely redeemed himself since that starts and has played well in the most important moments of the year. I mean, right now he's being nominated as a mid-season National Wide Receiver of the Year at sportingnews.com. That's big there. And you look at the historic accolades with Van Pelt. I mean, he's only 5'10". That's the thing that's so impressive about Van Pelt. As explosive as he is, great athlete, very explosive. He's got the potential to be an elite football player at the college level. And Jaidon Van Pelt has proven he is an incredible athlete. He's obviously quick, but he's just got great hands, just very talented kid, very gifted player. And Van Pelt surpassed the single-season receiving record for most receptions and most receiving yards in a season, 66 carries for 1,365 yards. And Carroll's had plenty of talent over the years. So that's impressive for him, for Dud Dinosaur. I know Dud's got to be really proud of his team's efforts for Carroll to come back the way they did against the Penn Kingsmen to win that game. That's impressive for Carroll because now they got a tall task coming up against Westfield. They're going to be home, though, which is big, against the Westfield Shamrocks, or some people like to call them the Rocks of Westfield. That's Indy area school. They are coming off a 2010 win against Fishers for the Westfield Shamrocks. Proud tradition of Westfield. They're a team that their defense is what they're known for. You look at their road. It's been a pretty tough road for Westfield. They had an overtime win at Carroll on November 7th, 23-20 OT winner for them. And then 2010 win against Fishers. Again, a lot of it came down to teams of Westfield. The kicking game was critical for Westfield to establish that lead early and to be able to build and control the game the rest of the way for the Shamrocks. Their defense is going to be a big part of what Westfield is. We expect this to be a different ball game on Friday night because Westfield's defense is definitely stout, and this is a program with a proud history. They made it to state last year, right? And obviously they came up short at the hands of Brownsburg. Westfield fans remember that game so well, that loss to Brownsburg. They want to get back to the state finals. So there's a sense of motivation for Westfield coming in to this game. And for the Shamrocks, obviously the key thing is going to be, got to be able to move the football, control the line of scrimmage, get your running game going. They run the ball quite a bit, led by Aiden Grabowski, 14 carries, 91 yards, and a touchdown. They average 6 yards per carry against Fishers. We expect Westfield to kind of grind it out, if you would, for the Shamrocks. They're not a team that throws the ball incredibly. They don't throw the ball a lot. They only threw 13 times against Fishers. So this is a team that doesn't throw the ball too much. Carroll is a spread offense. Westfield, a little bit more of a ground game for them. They only average 144 passing yards per game, although they are pretty efficient, 61% completion. So the Westfield's game is primarily running the football. You have Grabowski. You also got one thing to note here: they are without Deacon. Actually, they had Deacon Keene coming back to the game recently against Fishers. He had 13 rushing yards, 8 tackles, 6 solo. But Deacon Keene did miss some time this year. He is still the leading rusher, which is still impressive there. But lately, it's been Grabowski kind of leading the backfield for the Westfield Shamrocks. Pretty balanced offense there. So you expect the run game to be big for Westfield. With Westfield, they got the numbers, they got the athletes, and one name to watch up front is going to be Olamide Fapetu, 5'11" linebacker. He's got over 100 tackles on the season for Westfield. You got Andrew Noble, there's also a wide receiver there. Isaac Dwenger averages 8.6 tackles per game. He's a senior linebacker. So really their defensive front is really good. Alex Arambles, I cannot pronounce his name. I apologize. He's got 12 sacks as defensive end. So they're going to have to make sure they figure out how to block this guy because he is getting to the quarterback at an insane rate right now. Logan Loring with 6 picks. Their senior defensive end. It's a pretty experienced defense at Westfield. And yeah, they don't rely too much on throwing the ball. They're more of a run-based team offensively. Defensively, though, they cause a lot of trouble. And Alex Arambles is a problem for Westfield. If Carroll doesn't stop this guy, it could get interesting on Friday night. So Carroll's gonna have to have their eyes on Alex Arambles, make sure they block him, protect Gabe Freisinger, and let's see what Carroll can do offensively speaking. But Carroll's got an opportunity to make it to state for only the second time ever. It's going to be a tough task against Westfield, a much more stingy defensive team in Westfield. Carroll hasn't played a lot of games this year where they've had to play in those, teens, low 20s, not a lot of those games. They haven't really played a lot of those games. So you got to hope that the early season struggles that they had against HSC and Center Grove and Dwenger, you got to hope that those learning curves from those first 4 weeks are going to pay off in a big way against Westfield because this will be their toughest test since that Dwenger game in terms of their ability to score against the defense. So something to keep an eye on as we wrap up our coverage here of the football season and getting ready for Friday Night Football for semi-state. So we have 6 teams in our area. We have quite a few of those schools have a tradition of success. It was Adams Central, Bishop Luers, and Bishop Dwenger. Right, those teams always expect to make deep runs. Carroll's kind of recently become a contender in recent years. Concord finally getting to the semi-state for the first time in over a dozen years. Great job for them. They've had a nice history of football, but finally finding some success beyond sectionals. South Adams making it back to semi-state for the second year in a row, which is something unheard of for South Adams football. In fact, it's even more historic that Coach Mosier even mentioned that this is the first time in South Adams history they have an above 500 record in their all-time wins and loss record at South Adams. So they are doing something right at South Adams when that happens. So obviously South Adams, Adams Central, Bishop Luers, Bishop Dwenger, Concord, and Carroll, all 6 of these teams have a chance to get to the state finals. At this point in the season, you'd expect good football. you get this far in the playoffs, you expect this to be competitive games on paper. But again, it's not about what Sam Fritz says or somebody else says, about what you can do on the football field when Friday night comes and goes, right? How these teams play on Friday night will obviously dictate how things go. But again, we want to wish those 6 teams the best of luck as they try to punch their ticket to the state finals and hope to make Turkey Day on Thanksgiving a very memorable one for all those fan bases alike. So now, that is it for this episode here. I will shift over to my interview with Craig Koehler to wrap up this episode. Good luck to these 6 area teams. Best of luck. Enjoy the Friday night footlights. And I'll see you next time. Concord Miniman Craig Koehler, as his team is 1 win away from the state finals, something that hasn't happened in Concord football in nearly 20 years. And Coach, it's been a great season for your team, and obviously a season built with a lot of memories. We'll talk about the season matter moments, but briefly, take me through your journey as a football coach up to this point for those that are not familiar with you.
Well, I was born into it. My dad was a high school football coach. My older brother coaches the tight ends at the University of Minnesota. My younger brother, I'm the middle of 3 boys. My younger brother used football to get his master's, and then he hit the crossroads and decided to go make money. And he works in business now, but he GA'd and got his master's degree while coaching. So I'm a product of what I come from. I was born and raised in central Indiana, just outside of Lafayette. Went to a small 3A school named by the name of Benton Central. Had a lot of influence. My high school coach, David Black, had a lot of influence on me. Obviously, my dad and my parents had a lot of influence on me. And in terms of my career, I've been at Concord was my first job out of college. So I'm in year 25. And I'm old enough where I actually started out coaching the freshmen at our school and moved up to the junior varsity, moved up to the D coordinator, and eventually got the head job. So that's not typically how it works anymore. It seems like everyone, there's a lot of young guys that are head coaches, and we're fortunate at our place because there's been a foundation laid in how we do things, and coached under a Hall of Fame coach for 14 years before I got the head job. I'm in my 11th year as the head coach.
Yeah, so you've seen a lot of success with Concord over the years and whatnot. And obviously, we look at Concord entering the season. When you look at your great team last season as well, they lost to Warsaw in the Central Championship game in a thrilling game. Someone had to win that game, and obviously, we know what happened. Warsaw, they went to the state finals. Blah blah blah. Obviously, this season you came in with that loss in your memory, and then you kind of had kind of a different, unique season, whatnot, because your current home field that you usually play is under construction. So you've been going to different places all season long. The narrative's kind of been built all season long or whatnot. Can you take me through what this journey has been up to this point, from where it started in the summer until now?
Yeah, well, it's been unique. We were made aware, I believe, in the spring, that it was not going to be an option. Maybe even before that, I can't remember exactly when we were made aware, but it just was not going to be feasible to have the stadium done. It was a complete rebuild, and it was at the same site. So it wasn't like we were building a new stadium on another site where we could transition out of the old one into the new one. It was the same site. So it was basically completely leveled. All buildings, bleachers, surface, track, everything. The entire stadium is brand new, and they're putting it exactly where the old one was. So it just wasn't going to be feasible for us to have a home schedule this year. So we went in, and tried to make the best of it in terms of how we managed our home games. It was a cycle where we had 5 home games, so we were able to obviously cross-reference with some schools close to us, and we were able to make it so that we only had to use 2 sites, 2 schools for our home games, Mishawaka and Elkhart. And then we were able to get the Lucas Oil game done week 9. That game was supposed to take place at Elkhart. So we ended up with 2 at Mishawaka, 2 at Elkhart, and then the game at Lucas Oil Stadium. But it was not, Sam, in the beginning. It was obviously a tough pill to swallow, but I would be lying to you if I didn't say that, we tried to use it, and it made it easy in the off season, to kind of lean into and kind of make it our rallying cry that we were going to be the road warriors, and it was going to be us against the world, and all those cliches. We leaned into them hard, and the kids embraced it. And obviously, it's turned out, it's to the kids' credit and our parents. Our parents. I mean, there's been a lot of things done behind the scenes to try and create home game environments at our quote unquote home games. There's been a lot of people that have chipped in, and it's been an awesome year. A lot of people have asked me about it. Like, at this point, it's almost like we wouldn't know how to feel to have a home game. It's part of the routine on Fridays. So yeah, started out kind of rough, tough news to take, but it's worked out in our favor. Obviously, the Lucas Oil game week 9 was certainly something that is going to be memorable for all of our kids to play down there, and here we are. Hopefully, we get another shot to get down there.
Yes, and obviously this team's had a lot of success. We've known that from the past years. Concord's got a lot of talent. Bo Brunner, the quarterback, Derek Gomez, your tight end, and someone that plays great defensively. Reese Brevard, talented running back. We saw that in the sectional run, particularly with the Warsaw game, the 91-yard return. And then he had a great game against Northside with all the weapons they have at Northside and whatnot. We'll talk about the Jeff game at our moment, but can you take me through the senior class as a whole at Concord and what they represent, this rich tradition of the Concord football program?
Yeah, they're different, Sam. Not a vocal group. Um, Very, very quiet group, and enough so that we were concerned, leading into the season about leadership, and not having really any vocal leaders. But it took it took a period of time for us as a staff to accept that, because it's just not the norm. You typically have at least a guy or two that are your verbal leaders, and we have one kid that will speak up when need be. Our He's a team captain, defensive end Parker Schaefer is kind of the only vocal guy, but even he is not super vocal. So you know it was concerning, early in the year, but then we get into a situation like we were in last week, and that level of calmness that they seem to express certainly was beneficial last week, because that game was so up and down, and highs and lows, and our kids kind of just stayed right in the middle and just kept plugging away, and all the way to the very end of the game, obviously. So they are a great group of kids. I mean, a fantastic group of kids. They're just not rah rah guys. That's not who they are. It's not in their DNA, and um, it's made this team unique, because you would think, a team that's had a lot of success, would be you get a stereotype of what you think those kind of teams look like. That is not what this team is. It is a very um, down the middle, um, level headed group of kids.
Yeah, they let the play on the field talk. That is for sure. And that leads to the Lafayette Jeff game last week. That was a bonkers, surreal moment at Elkhart against Jeff. I believe Jeff was up at one point. The 2 minutes, you had both teams exchanging scores in those last 2 minutes. You had an onside kick for Concord to set up the field goal, and then Nathan Potter, I mean, the senior kicker, for who he is as a kicker, nails a 48-yard field goal to win that game. Can you take me through those last 2 minutes of that game against Jeff? And this is type of the surreal moments that took place before and then following the kick.
Yeah, boy, it's hard. There were so many isolated scenarios in that last 2 minutes. It's hard to piece it together. You really got to think hard about it. But we were down 38-31, um, and scored to tie it with about, I think, a minute minute and a half, maybe a minute 40 left. Kicked the PAT, kicked off, kicked it into the end zone, touchback. They get it on the -20. We're in man under two deep. They leak it back. Our linebacker takes a bad angle. He gets out, gets up the sideline all the way down to like the +20. Next play, we're out of timeouts, by the way. The next play, they hand it off, get another chunk play, another first down. Now they're, I think, first and goal at like the 9. And we're screaming out to our kids to let them score. Fortunately, it was loud. Fortunately, our kids heard. We leave it. We let them score. We get the ball back down 48-5, 28, and are facing the sequence of events, sequence of plays leading up to it. But I can't remember specifically every play leading up to it, but we were 4th and 23 from about midfield. Convert. We ran a little concept where we were hoping the safety would carry the post. We ran a vertical ball behind it, and we convert. We punch it in on 4th and 2, 4th and goal from the 2, with about 46, 47 seconds to go. Decide to go for 2 to win the game. It was a wild game. We were having little to no success stopping them at the time. Thought it was the time to try and win the game. We do not get it. Line up for an onside kick, get the onside kick with about 40 seconds to go, get a first down, gain another 4 or 5 yards in the next set of downs, get it down to the 31. It's third down, clock's running, there's 20 seconds to go. And at this point, as a coach, you either run the risk of running another play, you don't get the first down, you get tackled in bounds, you run the risk of the clock running out. So we decide to let it run down, kill it on third down. So it's 4th and I don't know what it's 4th and 3 or 4, whatever, from the 31. And Nathan walked it off. It was to think that, Sam, like we've talked about this, I think there's a chance that if we get the 2-pointer and go up 46-45, we lose the game, because at that point, they still had a timeout left and 46, 47 seconds left. They have a good kicker. And, but, our kids didn't flinch. This is the part I was talking about. You would have not have known after we missed the 2-pointer. Our kids ran off. It was time for an onside kick. And our kicker had been hitting those very well in practice. We thought we'd have a chance at it, and we have some kids that can, just play. Reese is a playmaker. Reese jumps, seemed like 2-3 feet above everyone else, snatches it out of the air. The hop is perfect for an onside kick. And all of a sudden we get the ball. Well, we're on the +46 with 40-something seconds to go. So, but like what I was talking about, how they just stay right here, it was never more evident. There was never any emotion shown that, there was no one putting their chin on their chest. It was just like, okay, on to the next. We didn't get it. Let's go. We just worked onside last night, and in our pregame practice, he was hitting perfect onside kick. I think we were all confident he was going to hit a good onside kick. He did, and kind of that's the way it went. It was surreal.
Boy, we have seen quite a few amazing wins over the past few weeks in football, whether it's at Concord and Goal and Eastbrook, all across the state of Indiana. We've seen quite a few historic wins and whatnot, which sets up the semi-state game coming up on Friday at the Region, which specifically in Merrillville, taking on the Pirates, a team that's been knocking on the door the last few years in semi-state. They've never won a semi-state championship before. In Merrillville, they have a lot of talent, and you expect that with this team. They got Michael Hill Jr., their quarterback. They got Mikael Smoot, their wide receiver, Jaquarius Johnson. I can go on and on with Merrillville. They got a lot of talent. You kind of expect that on Friday night. Can you give me a little bit more assessment about what Merrillville will bring to the table this week?
Well, top to bottom, they're the most talented team we will have played. Obviously, Jeff was very talented as well. The quarterback is different. He is, he will be probably the best individual player we will have played against. He's an incredible athlete. He's a dual threat guy. Has a very live arm. He's accurate. His foot speed is as good as we've seen. I mean, if he gets out, we're not catching him. No one has caught him when he gets out. I think I read today he's third in Indiana in total offense, passing and rushing yards. He is the real deal. We're going to have to be very opportunistic on defense because you know, no one has stopped them. Loyola Academy out of Chicago probably defended them best, but they've scored. I don't know what they're averaging. Probably, I would assume close to 40 a game. Um, so it has the makings, at least on paper, to be another high scoring game. We got to find a way. We had Jeff in some third and longs and couldn't get off the field. We got to figure out a way to get off the field. It would be wonderful if we could turn them over a couple times, but we're not going to no one has stopped them, and we won't stop them either. I mean, we have to defend them and try and limit them. But last week we were able to I think we forced one punt. We had a fourth down stop on fourth and goal. Um, we had a pick and we forced a field goal. So we had 4 possessions against Jeff where we held him out of the end zone, and ultimately that was enough. I got to believe if we can get to 5, if we can get to 5 of keeping them out, hopefully that's enough. Like I said, if we could turn them over, that would obviously benefit us. Special teams will be big. Both teams are good on special teams. We have to do a good job in that area. We got to find an edge somewhere. Now, that being said, we are who we are. We've played 12 games. We're not going to change our stripes now. We've leaned on our offense all year, and there's been no one really to date that's had a lot of success defending us either. So, it's going to be. I expect it to be an exciting game, one that fans will enjoy watching. Probably not ones that defensive coordinators enjoy coaching in.
Yeah, we kind of expect a lot of offense in this game just because Maryville does have the explosive athletes, and we have seen what Maryville has done over the past few years. They just have a lot of weapons, and they're going to come down the trenches, they're going to come down the special teams, and maybe get some swing points going in your favor and whatnot. Should be a great game on Friday for Concord fans to experience a memorable season, and fitting enough that this season will, no matter what happens for Concord, is going to end on the road, kind of embracing that road warriors type of mentality and whatnot. So my last question to you, coach, is talk about what it's like being in this Concord community right now, the program, being part of this community, and then when you step on the field at Maryville on Friday, what's going to be that last message for those players before they come out on the field to get ready for the game?
Well, football is a big deal in our community. It's important. Obviously, what we're investing in right now with our stadium. We have we arguably have one of the premier strength and conditioning facilities in the Midwest. It's a 13,000 square foot strength conditioning facility. We have a football only weights class. There are a lot of support systems in place, and there's a lot of people that value football at Concord High School. Our administration, our superintendent, our school board, our community. So we're very fortunate to be where we are. We expect there'll be a lot of people that'll travel over there. It's been 12 years since we've been in this game. So yeah, like there's when you get to be, I'm almost 50, and when you're young and growing in the profession, you kind of think, you certainly, in the fall of 2001, when I took the job, I didn't know what to expect, but I certainly didn't think I'd have the same job. I've had the same job for 25 years, not just coaching, but I've been fortunate to be in our weight room. We now have a full-time strength coach in there with me. Football is very important at Concord, as are all athletics at our school. Um, but what I tell our kids, the same thing we always tell them: like we have to be us. Being us is good enough, and if it's not, it's not. But if we play the way we're capable of playing, and we play with fanatical effort, we can live with the results. It's kind of the way we've been all year, and we came up short in week 3, and but outside of that game, just being us has been good enough. And it's either Sam, it either is going to be good enough or it's not. I can promise you, it will not be because we don't play hard. Um, we're going to make mistakes. Just like Maryville will. You hope you make less of them, and you hope you get the ball to bounce your way, because that's what it takes in a game like this and to make a run like this. But I can guarantee you that we will play with great effort, and our kids value our program and know what we represent in our community.
I think that's a pretty good way to end that question, Coach. Any last thoughts before we let you go?
No, I appreciate it. I've seen you on social media a little bit on Twitter, and it's appreciate you having me on. Hopefully we're around for another week. That'd be pretty neat for our kids and our community.
Yeah, be a good way to celebrate Thanksgiving next week is get that Concord State Finals run to Luers Stadium. Coach, thank you for taking time to talk with the Minutemen, and good luck to you this week as you try to punch your ticket to the state finals.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.